The Hitchhiker in the Dust. It happened in late August of 2016, on Highway 285, between Pecos and Fort Stockton, Texas, a stretch of cracked asphalt cutting through the kind of desert where sound dies and mirages breathe. The air shimmered from the heat even after midnight, and the only light came from the halogen beams of 18-wheelers and the cold silver moon. Jake Miller, a 39-year-old truck driver from Oklahoma, had been on the road since dawn, hauling aluminum piping to a refinery outside Odessa. He hadn't slept in nearly 20 hours. When the desert gets that quiet, the mind starts making its own noises. It was close to 2:45 a.m. when he saw the man. A figure stood just off the shoulder, motionless in the dust, tall, thin, wearing a dark trench coat that didn't make sense in that kind of heat. Jake slowed, thinking maybe someone's car had broken down. As he drew closer, the figure turned its head toward him. The face was pale, drawn, almost gray in the glow of the headlights. Without really deciding, Jake eased onto the gravel, his tires crunching as the truck hissed to a stop. "You okay out here?" he called out, leaning over the passenger seat. The man nodded once. He didn't smile, didn't move closer, just raised a hand slowly and pointed down the highway. "You need a ride?" Jake asked. Another nod. The man opened the door without a sound and climbed in. His coat brushed the dashboard as he sat, eyes fixed forward. The air smelled faintly of smoke and something metallic. Jake glanced at him once or twice, trying to break the silence. "Where you headed?" The man's voice was low, dry as sandpaper. "Fort Stockton." Jake nodded. "That's on my way." For several miles, neither of them spoke. The road stretched endlessly through the darkness, and the wind pushed thin streaks of sand across the asphalt. Jake turned on the radio, but all he could find were faint stations drowned in static. When he looked at his passenger again, the man's face was barely visible, but his eyes reflected the light from the dashboard, dull and lifeless, like glass marbles. "You from around here?" Jake asked. The man's lips moved, but what came out was almost a whisper. "Used to be." A shiver crawled up Jake's spine. He forced a laugh. "You don't talk much, do you?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he slowly turned his head toward Jake, and in that fleeting moment illuminated by the passing yellow line reflectors, Jake saw something that froze his hands on the wheel. The man's eyes were completely black. No whites, no pupils. Just a void. Jake's heart thudded. He blinked, glanced again, and the man was gone. The seat was empty. The truck jerked to the right as Jake swerved in shock, tires biting the gravel. He slammed on the brakes, his rig skidding to a stop in a cloud of dust. For a long moment he sat there, breathing hard, staring at the passenger seat. The door was still shut. The cab was cold. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. He turned off the engine and stepped out. The desert was silent. The highway stretched in both directions, endless and empty. He grabbed his flashlight and swept the beam along the ground. No footprints. No tire marks. Nothing but sand. That's when he saw it, a small wooden cross on the shoulder, its paint faded, its base surrounded by dried flowers. A cracked metal plate at the bottom read, "In memory of Daniel Price, 1987 to 2011. Jake stood frozen. The name meant nothing to him, but as he knelt closer, he noticed something buried halfway in the sand, a pair of broken sunglasses, one lens missing. He picked them up and looked at the reflection of his own shaking hand. A sudden gust of hot wind blew past, lifting a swirl of dust. In that moment, Jake heard a voice behind him, faint but clear, like someone speaking through static. "Fort Stockton." He spun around. No one there. The flashlight flickered and went out. Jake climbed back into the truck, slamming the door shut, his breath fogging the glass even though the night was still warm. He turned the key, the engine coughing to life. The CB radio crackled, but Jake hadn't turned it on. A voice came through, thin and distant. "Thanks for the ride." Jake ripped the cord from the receiver and floored the accelerator. The truck roared forward, headlights cutting the black horizon. He didn't look in the mirrors, not even once. He drove until dawn, until he saw the orange lights spilling across the desert and the distant signs of civilization. When he finally reached Fort Stockton, he pulled into a diner and stumbled inside. The waitress, middle-aged, tired, the kind who'd seen everything, took one look at him and frowned. "You okay, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost." Jake's lips trembled. "Picked one up last night," he muttered. She gave a nervous laugh, but when he told her where it happened, mile marker 224, just before the Pecos turnoff, her face drained of color. "My brother died there," she whispered. "Daniel Price. Burned alive when his car flipped. That was 5 years ago." Jake didn't say a word. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the broken sunglasses, and set them on the counter. She stared at them for a long time, her hands trembling. "He used to wear these," she said softly. Jake left the diner without finishing his coffee. He checked into a small motel nearby and tried to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw the man sitting beside him, eyes black, face gray, pointing down the endless road. Later that evening, a mechanic came to check his truck. "Your dash cam's still running," the man said. "Want me to stop it?" Jake frowned. "Dash cam? I turned it off last night." The mechanic handed him the SD card. It was still recording till morning. Jake played it back that night in his motel room. The video showed him driving down Highway 285. Everything normal, until about 2:45 a.m., when the passenger door opened by itself. The seatbelt moved as if someone had sat down. The headlights dimmed for a few seconds, and then, nothing. The passenger seat stayed empty, but every few minutes, a faint shadow shifted in the glass of the window. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the radio in the video flickered on. "Thanks for the ride." The screen went black. Jake never drove Highway 285 again. He transferred to shorter routes in Oklahoma and refused to talk about that night. But every now and then, other drivers reported the same thing, a tall man in a dark coat standing alone in the dust near mile marker 224, raising a hand for a ride toward Fort Stockton. Most pass him by. Some don't. And those who stop, they never forget the smell of smoke in their cab, or the voice that follows them through the static. The end. The gas station that wasn't there. It happened in early November of 2019, just outside El Paso, Texas. The desert there feels endless, flat land, broken only by distant mountains, wind-blown billboards, and the remains of things that used to matter, rusted fences, a diner with no windows, an old gas sign half buried in sand. That night, a man named Henry Collins was driving west from Dallas after a week-long job installing solar panels. He was 53, quiet, reliable, and the sort of man who always filled up his tank before the needle hit a quarter. But somewhere past Sierra Blanca, in that strange middle stretch where radio stations dissolve into static, his gas light came on. The dashboard read 17 miles remaining. He cursed under his breath, checked his phone, no signal, and drove on, hoping for a station. The clock on the dash glowed 1:27 a.m. when he saw it, a flicker of light ahead, then a tall red and white sign with a faded logo. Miller's Gas and Goods. The sign swayed in the wind, and beneath it, a single old pump in a small building with a flickering neon open sign. Henry felt relief wash over him. He pulled in, gravel crunching beneath his tires. The place looked dated, maybe 1970s, old Coke machine, payphone booth cracked and half swallowed by sand, a yellow porch light buzzing weakly. The only sound was the low hum of the pump. Inside the glass window, a man stood behind the counter, his shoulders stooped, hair white as bone. He wore a gray uniform shirt with Walt embroidered above the pocket. When Henry stepped out, the man waved once, slow, mechanical, almost like he'd been waiting for him. "Evenin'," Henry said, approaching the pump. "Didn't think I'd find a place open this late." The old man's voice carried through the cracked door. "Always open. Folks get stranded out here." Henry filled his tank. The pump's screen was old, yellowed, but it ticked steadily. The numbers looked strange, flickering slightly. He didn't care, he was too tired to notice. Inside, the air smelled of oil and dust. A small radio sat on the counter playing faint country music, something from another time. The man, Walt, watched him the whole time without much expression. "How far to El Paso?" Henry asked, trying to make conversation. "About an hour," Walt said. "If you stay on this road." He paused. "Don't take the turn at mile 39. Henry frowned. "Why's that?" "Road's not there anymore," Walt said simply. "Hasn't been for years." Henry chuckled uneasily. "All right. I'll keep straight then." He paid in cash, $25, and Walt handed him a receipt written on thin paper. The letters looked like they'd been typed decades ago. "Drive safe," the old man murmured. When Henry stepped back outside, the air had changed. The wind had died completely. The world felt heavier somehow. He shook off the feeling, climbed into his truck, and drove off, headlights slicing through the stillness. He didn't realize until he was 20 miles down the road that the radio was gone, pure static on every station. He looked down at the receipt on the passenger seat. The paper was blank. Completely white. He tossed it aside, convincing himself he'd imagined it all, that fatigue was playing tricks on him. By the time he reached El Paso around 2:45 a.m., the city lights looked like salvation. He found a motel near the interstate, parked his truck, and fell asleep almost instantly. The next morning, he mentioned the gas station to the clerk at the front desk, a young woman with dark hair and tired eyes. "You mean Miller's Gas?" she asked, looking confused. "That place burned down." "God, must have been 10, 12 years ago. The guy who ran it, Walt something, died in the fire." Henry laughed, though it came out dry. No. I was just there last night. He sold me gas." The clerk frowned. "No, sir. That place doesn't exist anymore. Locals say sometimes you can still see the sign when the fog's low, but..." She trailed off. Henry's mouth went dry. "You're kidding." She shook her head. "Not at all. My uncle was a firefighter back then. Said they never found Walt's body." Henry left without another word. He drove back down Highway 10 that afternoon, determined to prove her wrong. The sun was high, the desert glaring. Mile after mile of open road. When his GPS showed he was near the same area, he slowed, scanning the horizon. No sign. No building. No pump. Nothing but wind, sand, and a blackened patch of ground littered with rusted metal. He pulled over, stepped out, and walked through the debris. In the center of it all, half buried in the dirt, was a melted metal plate. He kicked the sand away and read the words burned into it, "In memory of Walter H. Miller, 1928 to 2007. Henry staggered backward, heart pounding. He turned toward his truck, but something caught his eye, a plastic bottle lying near the foundation, still sealed, still full. He picked it up. The label was a faded logo, Miller's Gas and Goods. The water inside was warm, slightly cloudy. The cap twisted open with a dry crack. He raised it to his nose and gagged. It smelled like burned plastic and smoke. He dropped it instantly. The sound echoed too loud for such an open space. The air around him seemed to shift again, a heat wave without the heat. He froze as a faint voice rose from nowhere, layered with static, like a radio signal drifting in and out. "Always open, folks get stranded." The words were the same ones Walt had said the night before. Henry turned in a slow circle, scanning the emptiness. Nothing moved. He climbed back into his truck and slammed the door. His hands trembled on the steering wheel. When he looked at the passenger seat, the blank receipt lay there again, but now letters had appeared, faint and gray, like ash pressed into paper. "Thank you for stopping by. Come again soon." The paper crumbled in his fingers. By the time Henry reached El Paso again, he felt sick, his stomach twisting, his head ringing. He checked into a hospital that evening after collapsing in the motel bathroom. Doctors said it was heat stroke, dehydration, exhaustion. They kept him overnight. At dawn, a nurse entered his room holding his wallet and keys. "We found these in your truck," she said. "You had this too." She held out a bottle of water, same one from the gas station. The label was blackened, the logo burned away. Henry refused to touch it. "Throw it out," he whispered. The nurse frowned. "It's just water." But later that day, she told the night staff something strange. When she tried to open the bottle to dump it, the liquid inside had already evaporated. Henry was discharged 2 days later. He never drove that route again. He sold the truck within the month, quit long-distance work, and moved closer to his daughter in Austin. But sometimes, late at night, he'd hear the faint hum of a gas pump, the rattle of an old neon sign in the wind. And once, in 2022, while driving to visit his daughter's family, his phone buzzed with a notification from a local news alert app. The headline read, "Stranded driver claims to find ghost station near El Paso." The photo attached showed the same sign, Miller's Gas and Goods, its red letters glowing faintly against the night sky. Henry deleted the app immediately. But before he turned off his phone, the screen flickered, and a low voice came through the speaker. "Drive safe." He never spoke of it again, but when his daughter cleaned out his garage after his death in 2024, she found a sealed cardboard box labeled road logs. Inside were maps, receipts, and a single water bottle, half full, its label burned to ash. Radio channel 191. It happened in late May of 2013, near the small desert town of Marfa, Texas. The night was bone dry and windless, the kind of silence that makes every sound feel too loud. Deputy Sheriff Mike Herrera had been on patrol since sunset, covering the lonely stretch of Route 90 where nothing ever seemed to happen, except for the things people whispered about. He was 34, a former Army radio technician, the kind of man who trusted what he could hear more than what he could see. At 2:11 a.m., the desert was black glass around him. The radio in his cruiser was quiet, tuned as always to the standard police dispatch frequency, channel 130. Then, without warning, a faint crackle broke through the static, followed by a woman's voice. "Unit 3, please, come in, accident, need help. Route 191. Mike frowned. There was no Route 191 in Presidio County. Not anymore. That old desert road had been decommissioned decades ago after a series of flash floods washed out the bridge. The radio shouldn't even pick up that channel. He pressed the transmit button. "This is Deputy Herrera, Presidio County Sheriff's Office. Identify yourself." Silence. Then the same voice again, trembling, desperate. "Please hurry, there's fire, can't get out." Mike turned his patrol car around, heading west toward the open desert. The road was empty, the stars sharp and endless above. As he drove, the radio flickered again, static, then breathing, then the faint crackle of flames. "Ma'am, what's your location?" he asked. "Near mile marker." "I can see, headlights." Mike slowed. "What color's your vehicle?" No answer. Just static, and a sound like someone knocking weakly on glass. He pulled over, checked his GPS, no coordinates, no route listed as 191. The map was blank beyond the current highway. But his headlights caught something faint in the dust, a side road, barely visible, half covered by sand and scrub. A weathered sign leaned sideways, its letters almost gone. Only one number was still legible, 191. He hesitated for a second, then turned the wheel. The tires hit the old pavement with a deep crunch. The desert swallowed him whole. For the next 10 minutes, he drove slowly, the road winding between small dunes. The air smelled faintly of burned oil. Then, in the distance, he saw it, a dim orange flicker on the horizon. Fire. Mike radioed dispatch. "Control, this is Unit 3, possible vehicle fire off Old Route 191. Do you copy?" No response. The line was dead. He accelerated, the flame growing larger until it revealed itself as a wreck, a sedan flipped on its roof, metal twisted, the cabin still burning. He parked 20 yards away, grabbed his flashlight, and ran toward it. Sheriff's office. Can you hear me? Through the crackle of flames, he thought he heard a faint moan. He crouched, peered through the shattered window, no movement. Inside the car, the dashboard was melted, the seats burned black. And yet, in the glow of his flashlight, he saw something impossible. The radio on the dash was on. Its screen flickered faint green, tuned to 191.000 megahertz. The same voice whispered through it, soft, distant, almost mournful now. Please, help me. Mike's heart pounded. Hold on, ma'am. I'm here. He tried the door, it didn't budge. When he circled around, the voice grew louder, echoing not just from the radio but from his own police transceiver, still clipped to his vest. You shouldn't be here. He froze. What did you say? The voice came again, slower this time. You shouldn't be here, it's not your call. The air turned suddenly cold. His flashlight flickered. He backed away from the wreck, pulling out his phone to take a photo for the report. The camera screen showed the burning car, but in the reflection of the shattered glass, he saw a woman sitting in the driver's seat, her head tilted, her hair covering her face. When he looked up, the seat was empty. He took one step back, and the car fire went out. Instantly. No smoke, no embers, just silence. Mike stumbled, coughing. The ground beneath the wreck was blackened, but the metal frame was cold to the touch, like it had been sitting there for years. He radioed again. Control, this is Unit 3. I've got a burnt vehicle, no fire now, no visible occupants. Requesting backup. The radio hissed, and then answered, but it wasn't dispatch. Backup's already here. The voice was his own. Mike froze. The sound came through his handheld unit, same cadence, same breathing. He turned it off. The static didn't stop. He climbed back into his cruiser, started the engine, and backed away, headlights cutting through the endless desert. But when he looked at the dashboard clock, the time hadn't moved. It still read 2:11 a.m. The same minute he'd first heard the transmission. His hands shook. He pressed the pedal harder, trying to get back to Highway 90. The road, however, began to change, the lines faded, the asphalt cracked and vanished beneath the sand. Soon there was only dirt. The radio flickered again. Please hurry, there's fire. It was looping, the same words from before. He turned the volume down. The loop grew louder anyway. Can't get out, can't get out. The voice cracked, distorted, like it was breaking apart. Mike's headlights caught something ahead, a wooden cross, leaning crookedly on the roadside. He stopped. The engraving was almost gone, but he could make out a few letters burned into the wood. In memory of Deputy Michael Herrera, 1979 to 2013. His stomach dropped. He stumbled out of the car, fell to his knees. The sand was cold beneath his hands. No, he whispered, shaking his head. No, that's not. The wind picked up, whispering like static through the sagebrush. His patrol car headlights began to dim, flickering in rhythm with the distant hum of a radio signal. Then, slowly, the voice returned, not from the speaker, but from the darkness around him. Can't get out. He ran back toward his cruiser, yanked open the door, and grabbed the mic control. This is Unit 3. Does anyone read me? Please respond. This time, dispatch answered. A young male voice, clear, professional. Unit 3, we've got your coordinates near Route 90. Are you reporting a 10 to 50, over? Relief flooded him. Yes, vehicle fire. Possible fatality. Need recovery crew. I'm at the site now. A pause. Then the voice came again, uncertain. Copy that, but deputy, you're listed as off-duty. You were pronounced deceased at the scene of that same wreck. 10 years ago. Static swallowed the line. Mike dropped the mic. His breath came in short gasps. He turned to look at the wreck again, only now there was no car, no road, no cross. Just the open desert, untouched, the sand rippling faintly under the wind. He reached for his body camera instinctively. The screen was on, recording. The timestamp glowed 2:11 a.m. still. He whispered into it, "If anyone finds this, I'm on Route 191. There was a car. The desert didn't answer. When the sun rose hours later, state troopers found his cruiser abandoned near the old Marfa turnoff. The tires were half buried in dust. The driver's seat was empty. The only thing left behind was the police radio, still powered on, tuned to an inactive frequency, 191.000 MHz. When they replayed the audio, they heard fragments, a man's breathing, a faint voice saying, "Ma'am, what's your location?" followed by the unmistakable crackle of fire. Then silence. The report was closed as an equipment malfunction and hallucination caused by fatigue. The road, Route 191, remained officially erased from maps. But sometimes, on still desert nights, other officers patrolling near Marfa hear a faint signal on their scanners, just a few words through the static. "Please hurry, there's fire." And always, the same timestamp. 2:11 a.m. The end. The motel by mile 46. It happened in late September of 2017, just off Highway 385, north of Odessa, Texas. The night was bone dry, the sky black and stretched wide with no moon. The air smelled faintly of dust and oil. At that hour, the highway was empty except for the low hum of passing rigs and the wind whispering through barbed wire fences. Ethan and Marissa Lang, a married couple in their mid-30s, were driving home from a funeral in Midland. They had left too late. The GPS kept losing signal, and the glow of the dashboard clock, 2:03 a.m., seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. They were exhausted. When Marissa spotted the neon sign flickering in the distance, she sighed with relief. The sign read Sundown Motel, vacancy, 24 hours. The letters buzzed, half-lit, as though fighting the desert wind. The building behind it was small, one-story, shaped like a horseshoe with 12 identical doors, each with peeling paint. "Thank God," Marissa said softly. "Let's stop here for the night." Ethan hesitated. "Doesn't look open." But when they pulled in, a dim yellow light glowed through the office window. Behind the glass stood a man, thin, middle-aged, wearing a plaid shirt buttoned up to his neck. His smile was polite but wrong somehow, too slow, too steady. Ethan stepped inside to register. The air smelled of mold and stale coffee. The clerk's name tag read Gerald. "Just need a room for the night," Ethan said. Gerald nodded. "Cash only." Ethan frowned but handed over $60. The man slid a key across the counter, old-fashioned brass with a tag that read Room 7. "No noise after 3, Gerald said. "And keep the curtains shut. We don't like drawing attention." Ethan forced a laugh. "Sure thing." Room 7 was at the far end of the row. Inside, the wallpaper was yellowed, the carpet stained, and the air conditioner rattled like something alive. But there was a bed, and that was enough. Marissa lay down almost immediately, shoes still on. Ethan locked the door and glanced through the thin curtains. Across the courtyard, the office lights still glowed, but Gerald was gone. He switched off the lamp. For the first few minutes, there was silence, then faint footsteps in the hallway outside, slow and dragging. Ethan assumed it was another guest until the sound stopped right outside their door. Then came 3 soft knocks. He sat up. "Who's there?" No answer. Just a faint scraping sound against the wood, like nails. He waited, then pulled the curtain aside. The courtyard was empty. The office light had gone out. Only the neon sign buzzed faintly through the dust. Ethan got back into bed, heart thudding. Marissa stirred. "What is it?" "Nothing. Just the wind." But the knocking started again, this time, from the wall behind the bed. He turned on the light. The sound stopped instantly. "Ethan," Marissa whispered, "let's just go." He nodded, but something made him hesitate, a strange hum, like static, coming from the small TV on the dresser. The screen flickered on by itself, glowing gray. For a moment, it showed only static. Then an image faded in, a live feed of their own room, filmed from somewhere near the ceiling. Marissa gasped. What the hell? Ethan unplugged the TV. The image remained for 3 seconds longer before the screen went black. They packed their things in seconds. When Ethan opened the door, the hallway outside was pitch dark. The neon sign buzzed louder now, an unnatural hum that seemed to vibrate in his chest. They hurried toward the car. Halfway across the courtyard, the lights in the motel rooms began switching on, one by one. Each window glowed with dim, yellow light, and behind every curtain stood a silhouette. Not moving. Just standing. Marissa clutched his arm. Go. Now. They reached the car, slammed the doors, and Ethan turned the key. The engine sputtered once, then died. He tried again, nothing but the click of the starter. When he looked up, the office light was back on. Gerald stood behind the glass again, smiling. This time, his eyes were open too wide, the whites reflecting the neon light. He raised one hand slowly and pointed toward room 7. Ethan turned to look. The door to their room was open. A faint light flickered inside. Suddenly, every door in the motel burst open at once. The silhouettes stepped out, men, women, children, all gray-skinned, motionless. Their faces were featureless shadows, their clothes soaked dark at the chest, as if burned. Marissa screamed. Ethan hit the gas again, and this time the engine roared. Gravel spat from the tires as the car shot forward. He didn't look back until they were a mile down the road. The neon sign behind them blinked one last time, then vanished into darkness. They drove for nearly an hour before they saw another building, a 24-hour diner. Inside, a tired waitress poured them coffee and listened as they told their story. When Ethan mentioned the Sundown Motel, she stopped mid-motion. Where did you say it was? Highway 385. Near mile 46. She went pale. Sir, that place burned down in 1993. Gas leak. Killed everyone inside. A family in room 7, husband, wife, 2 kids. Marissa's cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Ethan shook his head. No, no. We were just there. We saw the clerk. The waitress stared at him for a long moment. There's no clerk, honey. There hasn't been for 20 years. My cousin was the owner. Name was Gerald. They left the diner before dawn. Ethan didn't speak again until they reached Odessa. Neither of them slept that night. The next day, Ethan drove back, alone. He had to see it again, to prove it was real. By afternoon, the desert shimmered under a dry, cruel sun. At mile marker 46, he slowed. The road curved gently left, and there was nothing. Just a wide patch of sand, scattered with blackened wood and rusted pipes. No building. No sign. He parked, walked out onto the sand, and found a half-buried keychain. The brass tag read room 7. When he picked it up, his phone buzzed, no signal, but the screen lit on its own. A new photo appeared in his gallery. He opened it. The image was grainy, but unmistakable, him and Marissa asleep in the motel bed, the timestamp reading 2:47 a.m., September 29, 2017. He dropped the phone. The screen cracked. The wind rose suddenly, carrying faint whispers, childlike voices, distant laughter. Then, for just a second, he saw it again, the Sundown Motel, standing whole and perfect in the shimmer of the heat, the neon sign buzzing. In the window of room 7, a figure moved the curtain aside. It was Marissa. Her eyes were hollow, her face gray, her mouth open as if calling his name, but no sound came. The vision blinked out, leaving only the wind and the sand. When Ethan returned to town that evening, he checked himself into a hospital, muttering about smoke and lights and voices. The doctors said exhaustion, dehydration, stress. They gave him fluids, sent him home. 2 weeks later, the sheriff's department found his car abandoned near mile 46. Inside were his phone, his wallet, and the keychain marked room 7. The sand around the car was disturbed, as if dozens of bare feet had circled it in the night. Locals say that if you drive that stretch of Highway 385 after midnight, sometimes you'll see a faint glow to the east, an old neon sign blinking in the wind. Sundown Motel, vacancy. And if you pull over long enough, you might hear the sound of an air conditioner humming somewhere in the desert. The end. The Woman in White Sand. It happened in June of 2018, on the long stretch of Highway 54 that runs through the White Sands Desert in southern New Mexico, just north of the Texas border. The dunes there roll like frozen waves, pale and quiet, their silence broken only by the wind that whispers across them like static. Sergeant David Ramirez, a 27-year-old soldier stationed at Holloman Air Force Base, was driving back from a late shift. He'd taken the route dozens of times, but that night, something felt different. The sky was unusually clear, the moon sharp and bright, casting silver light across the endless white dunes. He was thinking about his mother, who'd passed away 2 years earlier. Her birthday had been that week. The desert at night always reminded him of her voice, calm, steady, filled with warnings he used to laugh at. Don't drive tired, Mijo. Don't stop for strangers on empty roads. It was 1:18 a.m. when he first saw her. A figure stood on the shoulder of the road, barefoot, wearing a long white dress that fluttered slightly in the warm wind. Her hair was long, dark, and tangled, her skin pale in the moonlight. David slowed down automatically, instincts from his training kicking in. Maybe she'd crashed her car or was lost. The nearest town, Alamogordo, was still 40 minutes away. He rolled down his window. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The woman turned her head slowly. Her face was expressionless, eyes dark and glassy, like she hadn't blinked in hours. Her voice was barely audible. "Please, help me." David pulled over, gravel crunching under his tires. "Do you need a ride?" She nodded once, and before he could get out, she was already at the passenger door. He hadn't seen her move. 1 second she was 10 feet away, the next she was beside the truck. He told himself it was the poor lighting in his tired eyes. She climbed in, folded her hands in her lap, and stared out the windshield. "Where to?" he asked, trying to sound calm. "Home," she whispered. "Just past the dunes." He frowned. "There's nothing out there." She didn't reply. Her dress was caked with dust, her bare feet streaked with what looked like dried mud, or blood. The smell inside the truck changed, a faint mix of burning plastic and perfume. They drove in silence for several minutes. The headlights caught only the empty desert and occasional glints of white sand. David glanced at her a few times. She didn't move, didn't breathe heavily, didn't even blink. Her hands were clasped tightly around a silver locket. He asked softly, "What happened to you?" She turned her head toward him then. Her voice came in a tremor. "It was an accident, he left me." "Who?" Her lips barely moved. "The one who promised he wouldn't." David felt a chill despite the heat. The GPS blinked erratically. The screen froze, showing no signal, no road. He checked his rearview mirror, the highway behind him had vanished into darkness. "Are you sure we're going the right way?" he asked. Her eyes found his in the mirror. "You should know," she said. "You were there." He laughed nervously. "What do you mean I was there?" "You stopped for me before." The words sank into him like cold water. He felt his pulse quicken. "No, I've never." She interrupted, her tone suddenly sharp. "You promised you wouldn't leave." David slammed the brakes. The truck skidded to a stop. The woman was gone. The passenger seat was empty. The faint smell of smoke filled the cab. He stepped out, flashlight in hand. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, wind brushing over the dunes like a whispering sea. He called out, "Hello? Ma'am?" Only the wind answered. He shone the light on the sand, and froze. Footprints. Bare, small, leading away from the road toward the dunes. He followed them, his boots sinking softly with each step. The prints continued for about 50 yards, then stopped. No body, no more steps. Just a patch of disturbed sand, like someone had fallen and vanished. His flashlight flickered, then died. In the darkness, he heard a faint sound, the creak of metal, the slow groan of a door hinge. He turned. There was no building, no car. Just his own truck on the road behind him, the door still open. But the headlights were off now. He climbed back in, started the engine. The dashboard clock read 1:18 a.m. again. He drove fast, gripping the wheel, trying to shake off the unease. A few minutes later, something thudded softly in the truck bed. He looked in the rearview mirror, nothing but darkness. Then came the whisper, faint but clear, from the passenger seat beside him. "You shouldn't have left me." David's blood ran cold. The seat was still empty, but the air beside him shimmered slightly, as if heat were rising from invisible skin. He pressed the gas pedal harder. The road seemed to stretch endlessly. Then, without warning, the headlights flashed across something, a wrecked sedan half buried in sand. He braked hard, heart hammering. The car's hood was crumpled, its windshield shattered. He stepped out and approached. Inside, a woman sat slumped over the steering wheel. The same white dress. The same dark hair. Her body was dry, brittle, mummified by the desert air. Around her neck hung a silver locket identical to the one he'd seen minutes earlier. He stumbled back, gasping. The ground under his boots shifted slightly, like something breathing beneath the sand. The air turned colder, and from the open window of the wreck came a faint whisper. "Home." He turned and ran. The dunes seemed to move around him, rising and falling like waves. He reached his truck, jumped in, slammed the door, and tore down the road toward Alamogordo. When he finally reached the lights of the base, it was nearly dawn. He parked outside the gate and sat shaking for several minutes before walking into the security office. The guard on duty, an older sergeant, looked up from his paperwork. "Everything all right, Ramirez?" David swallowed. "I found a wreck out on 54. A woman, white dress. She's dead. You need to send someone." The guard frowned. "You sure? That stretch hasn't had a crash in years." "Check it," David insisted. "By the dunes, 20 minutes north." They sent a unit later that morning. There was no car. No body. No footprints. Nothing but smooth white sand. When David returned that evening, one of the older officers pulled him aside. "You said you saw a woman?" "In white." David nodded. The man sighed. "She's been seen before. Locals call her La Novia del Desierto, the Bride of the Desert. Died out there in 1972. Car flipped during a sandstorm. They never found her fiancé. Folks say she waits for him, asks for rides, disappears when they stop." David stared at him. "That's not possible." The man shrugged. "Out here, a lot of things shouldn't be possible." That night, David couldn't sleep. He sat on his bunk, staring at the silver cross hanging by his bed. Around 2 a.m., his phone buzzed once. No caller ID. He opened it. A message appeared, "Thank you for the ride." His hands trembled as he deleted it. A week later, he finally worked up the nerve to clean out his truck. In the passenger seat lay a thin layer of white dust, like sand. Beneath it, half buried in the fabric, was something small and metallic. A silver locket. Inside was a photograph of a woman in a white dress standing beside a soldier in uniform. The soldier's face was faded, but the name tag was visible, Ramirez. David quit the base 2 months later and moved north. He never drove that highway again. But drivers still report seeing her, a woman in white walking barefoot along the dunes, flagging down cars in the moonlight. Those who stop say she smells faintly of smoke and perfume. And sometimes, When they look away, they find a single footprint of bare toes pressed into the sand on the passenger side floor. The end. The Desert Voice. It happened in August of 2020, along Highway 285, between Pecos and Fort Stockton, Texas, a stretch of desert road so empty that even the GPS seemed unsure if it existed. The nights there were vast and endless, the sky a cold, star-filled dome above miles of dead scrub and dust. Truckers called it the Devil's Spine. Locals avoided it after dark. On the night it happened, a long-haul driver named Caleb Turner was heading south with a load of metal fittings bound for Houston. He'd been on the road for 18 hours straight. His radio was off, his coffee long gone cold, and his eyes burned from fatigue. Around 2:40 a.m., the desert wind picked up, carrying faint bursts of static from nowhere. He checked the CB radio. It was off. The sound wasn't coming from inside the cab. It was outside, faint but real, a woman's voice carried by the air. He slowed, rolled down the window. Nothing but wind. He shook his head, muttering, "I need sleep," and pressed on. 10 minutes later, his GPS glitched. The robotic voice said, "Recalculating. Turn left in 1 mile." Caleb frowned. There was no left turn on this stretch. Just miles of desert and the occasional side road leading to oil wells. But as he approached the mile mark, his headlights caught a small dirt road veering off between the mesquite bushes. The GPS said, "Follow the road." Estimated arrival, 42 minutes. He hesitated. The highway was straight and safe, but exhaustion made him second-guess everything. Maybe it was a shortcut. Maybe he'd missed a detour. The map showed nothing, just a faint gray line. He turned. The dirt road narrowed quickly. His headlights carved thin tunnels through the darkness. Dust rose behind him, swallowing the glow of the highway. After 5 minutes, his GPS blinked off entirely, leaving only a frozen screen. That's when the voice came back, not from the radio this time, but through the truck's speaker system. A soft, calm woman's voice. "You're almost there, Caleb." He froze. The voice wasn't his GPS. It sounded human, real, tired, almost kind. "Who is this?" he asked, scanning the cab. Silence. Then, the same voice, "Keep driving. You'll see the lights soon." He gripped the wheel tighter. His truck's dashboard lights flickered, gauges bouncing slightly. The temperature dropped, his breath fogging faintly in front of him despite the August heat. He switched off the speakers, but the voice continued. "Don't stop now." He pulled over, heart pounding, stepped out into the cool air. The desert stretched endlessly under the moon. There was no wind now. Just stillness, heavy and waiting. He walked around the truck, checked the tires, the trailer, the cab. Everything was fine. Then he noticed footprints in the dust, small, bare footprints, circling the front of his truck and disappearing into the dark. He called out, "Hello? Is someone out there?" No answer. He turned back to the cab, but something made him glance at the side mirror. A faint reflection shimmered behind him, the shape of a woman standing in the truck's taillights. White dress, long hair, motionless. He spun around. She was gone. He jumped back in the cab, locked the doors, and started the engine. As he did, the radio flickered on by itself, the dial spinning wildly before settling on a frequency he'd never seen, 191.3 FM. A man's voice spoke now, low and steady. "Don't listen to her." Caleb swallowed hard. "Who are you?" "She's not leading you home." The woman's voice cut through the static again. "He's lying." "You're almost safe, Caleb." The radio hissed violently. Both voices overlapped, whispering his name, each one urging him in opposite directions. His hands trembled on the wheel. "Stop," he yelled, slamming his palm against the radio. It went silent. When he looked up, the desert road ahead was gone. He was parked at the edge of a dry ravine, the ground dropping off sharply just feet from his front bumper. If he'd kept driving, he would have gone straight over the cliff. He put the truck in reverse, tires spinning in the dirt as he backed away. His chest felt tight, his heart hammering. When he finally made it back to the highway, he pulled over and sat there, shaking. He grabbed his phone, trying to call dispatch, but there was no signal. The screen flickered once before freezing. Then, through the phone's speaker, the same woman's voice whispered, "You turn back again." He threw the phone onto the passenger seat. Dawn broke 2 hours later. When the first sunlight hit the horizon, he forced himself to drive to the nearest truck stop, a small gas station outside Fort Stockton. The attendant, a heavy-set man with oil-stained hands, noticed how pale he looked. "Rough night?" he asked. Caleb nodded. "Something like that. You ever hear voices out there on 285? The man's expression darkened. "Sometimes. Especially near the dry gulch south of Pecos. Folks say a woman died out there when her car went off the edge. She called 911, but the signal kept cutting out. They found her phone 2 days later, still recording." Caleb froze. "Recording what?" The man shrugged. "Just her voice. And another one, answering her. No one could explain it." Caleb didn't respond. He finished his coffee, bought a map, and traced his route with a trembling finger. There was no dirt road marked anywhere near where he'd turned off. Just blank desert. He tried to forget it, but that night in his motel room, the voice returned. It came through his phone even though it was powered off. "You didn't listen," it said. "You almost made it." He unplugged everything, turned the TV on for noise, and sat in the corner until morning. Over the next few days, strange things kept happening. His GPS wouldn't hold a signal. Every route recalculated on its own. The same phrase appeared each time, "Turn left in 1 mile." He took the truck to a repair shop in Odessa. The mechanic, a young guy named Felix, pulled the GPS unit and frowned. "You've got an old transmission chip in here," he said. "Pre-2015 model. Weird thing is, it's been rewired, like someone wanted it to transmit, not just receive." Caleb frowned. "Transmit what?" Felix shrugged. "No idea. But it's still pinging a frequency. 191.3. Caleb left immediately. He drove north that night, deciding to cut across toward Lubbock, far from the desert. The road was clear, quiet. For a while, he almost believed it was over. But just before midnight, his radio flickered again. The same voice. Calm. Familiar. "You can't keep running from me, Caleb." He slammed his hand against the dial. The frequency jumped back to 191.3. "Please," he said. "What do you want?" A pause. Then, softly, "You promised you'd help me." He stared at the road, eyes burning. "I don't know you." "You found me," she said. "You turned away. You left me there." His hands shook. "I didn't leave anyone." The headlights dimmed for a moment. When they brightened again, the road ahead was gone. In its place stretched the same dirt trail, winding toward the dunes. He hit the brakes. Dust rose around the truck. He looked around in disbelief, the same ravine, the same silence. The GPS blinked on once more, "Follow the road." Estimated arrival, 42 minutes. Caleb screamed and pulled the wheel, turning back toward the highway. But when he looked in the mirror, the reflection of his truck was wrong. The headlights showed another vehicle following close behind, an old sedan, smashed in at the front, windows shattered. Inside, a woman sat behind the wheel, her head tilted forward, hair covering her face. She was mouthing something. He couldn't hear it, but he could read her lips. "Help me." The image flickered and vanished. He drove straight through the night, never looking back. By sunrise, he reached a way station near Midland and called his company to report the malfunction. He didn't mention the voice, the road, or the woman. But the following week, another driver on the same route reported hearing a woman on the wind. His GPS froze at 191.3 MHz. When they reviewed the truck's dashcam footage, they found 6 minutes of static in one clear frame, Caleb's rig passing a point in the desert that doesn't exist on any map. In the reflection of the windshield, just for a second, a woman's face could be seen beside him. Her mouth was open, whispering something. Technicians enhanced the audio and slowed it down. The last words on the tape were clear. "You turned back again." The end. The Phantom Patrol Car. It happened in February of 2015, just outside Lubbock, Texas. The plains there are endless, flat, colorless, and dry, stretching beneath skies so big they feel like a ceiling about to collapse. The road between Lubbock and Brownfield cuts through miles of cotton fields and barren desert, with nothing but power lines and dust devils for company. Officer Derek Palmer of the Texas Highway Patrol was working the late shift that night. He'd been on duty for 11 years, a steady, level-headed man known for his patience and calm. That night, he was partnered with a rookie, Officer Tyler Grant, 24 years old and just 2 weeks into his first patrol. They'd pulled onto Farm to Market Road 41 around 12:30 a.m., cruising slowly, the red-blue reflection of their lights washing over the empty landscape. It was the kind of silence that made the hum of the radio and the crackle of static sound like thunder. "Nothing ever happens out here," Tyler said, half laughing. Derek smiled faintly. "That's the point. It's quiet. Until it isn't." By 1:10 a.m., they were 10 miles south of Lubbock when the radio suddenly burst to life, a faint, broken transmission. "Unit 12 requesting backup, pursuit southbound, mile marker 88. Tyler frowned. "Unit 12? That's not on tonight's roster." Derek checked the dispatch log. "Number 12 assigned for this district anymore." That call sign was retired. He hesitated before keying the mic. "Dispatch, confirm last transmission." "Who's on channel 3? There was a pause, then static. "Dispatch to Unit 6, no active Unit 12 at this time. Please repeat location." Before Derek could respond, the voice came again, louder now, urgent. "Pursuit in progress. Black sedan, no plates, southbound, Highway 385. Backup requested." Derek's eyes met Tyler's. "That's 15 miles from here." Tyler nodded. "We should check it out." They switched on their sirens and accelerated into the night, the desert wind howling past the windows. The highway stretched ahead like a ribbon of asphalt cutting through darkness. 10 minutes later, in the distance, they saw flashing red and blue lights, a patrol car moving fast, weaving slightly as though in pursuit of something invisible. "There!" Tyler pointed. "That must be Unit 12. But as they closed the gap, something was wrong. The car ahead was an older model, a Crown Victoria, the kind the department had phased out nearly a decade earlier. The paint was dull, the roof light cracked. Its license plate was unreadable, coated in dust. Derek grabbed the mic. "Unit 12, this is Unit 6. We're behind you. What's your status?" No response. The car kept its pace, lights flashing rhythmically, painting the desert in blue and red pulses. "Maybe his radio's out," Tyler said. "Maybe," Derek muttered. "But that car shouldn't exist." They followed for another mile before the Phantom car's taillights dimmed suddenly, then brightened again. The driver's window rolled halfway down. Derek caught a glimpse of the silhouette, a man wearing a patrol hat. His head turned slightly, just enough for the light to catch his face. It wasn't a face. Just empty blackness. "Jesus Christ," Tyler whispered. "Did you see that?" Before Derek could answer, the car swerved off the highway and turned sharply onto a narrow dirt road leading into the desert. Dust filled the air. "Stay with him," Derek ordered. They followed, bouncing across uneven ground. The siren from the old patrol car faded ahead of them, muffled by the wind. Then, without warning, the lights vanished. "Where'd he go?" Tyler shouted. Derek braked hard, gravel flying. Their headlights illuminated nothing but flat desert. The tracks from the other car led only a few yards ahead before disappearing entirely, as if the vehicle had lifted off the ground. They sat in silence for a long moment, the radio hissing softly. Then it crackled again, the same voice, faint but clear. "Officer down, repeat, officer down, need assistance." Tyler's eyes widened. "That's him." Derek reached for the radio. "Unit 12, give your position." "Where are you?" No reply. They turned the car around and headed back toward the highway. As they reached the pavement, the radio cut in once more, this time with static and a few broken words. "Highway 385, mile 91, accident, flames." Derek glanced at Tyler. "That's just a few miles up." They sped north. 10 minutes later, the horizon flickered with faint orange light. As they approached, the smell of burned rubber hit them. On the shoulder, a wrecked patrol car lay upside down, its frame twisted and blackened by fire. Tyler whispered, "That's the same car." Derek parked, grabbed the extinguisher, and ran toward it. The fire was mostly out, just small embers glowing inside. The number stenciled on the door read 12. The metal was cold. Too cold. Derek forced the driver's door open. Inside, there was no body, just a melted radio unit still wired to the dashboard. It flickered weakly, the LED screen glowing, transmit, active. He leaned closer. The radio hissed softly, then spoke. "Back up," requested. Tyler stumbled backward. "That's impossible. The power's dead." The sound faded into static, then stopped completely. The next morning, they filed their report. The wreck was photographed, towed, and stored at the Lubbock impound. The official record listed it as an abandoned training vehicle from years earlier, mistakenly left on patrol grounds. But Derek knew that wasn't true. The VIN number didn't match any record. The metal plate with the officer's name had been scrubbed clean, though faintly, beneath the soot, he could read the letters M. Gaines. He remembered that name. Officer Mark Gaines, killed in a pursuit in 1994, near mile marker 91. His car had burned after rolling into a ditch. They'd buried him with honors, his badge retired. That night, Derek couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., he sat in his living room, reading the old case file on his laptop. The report was brief, Unit 12 responding to pursuit southbound on 385. Last transmission at 1:09 a.m. Suspect vehicle unmarked, black sedan, no plates. Officer Gaines perished at scene. The timestamp on that last call, 1:09 a.m., matched exactly when they'd first heard the voice. He slammed the laptop shut. 3 nights later, Derek was driving home from a late shift when his radio suddenly came alive again. Unit 12 in pursuit, southbound 385. He pulled over, hands shaking. "Who is this?" Static. Then a whisper, barely audible. "Stay off the road." He turned off the radio. But as he sat there, headlights appeared in his rearview mirror, red and blue flashing lights, growing brighter, closer. A patrol car. The same older model. It slowed as it passed him, and for a second, he saw inside. The driver wore a uniform. The badge number on his chest glowed faintly, 2217, Gaines's number. Derek's radio, though shut off, whispered again. "Officer down." The car vanished into the darkness. Tyler transferred to another district soon after, refusing to drive night shifts again. Derek stayed. But he stopped answering the radio when Channel 3 came alive. A year later, a storm hit Lubbock. The power was out across the county. Dispatchers said that, around 1 a.m., one transmission broke through the static, a single voice repeating the same phrase, over and over. "Unit 12 in pursuit, southbound, need backup." Officers were sent to check the stretch near mile marker 91. They found tire tracks, old and deep, half flooded by rain, leading into the desert and stopping abruptly. When they returned to their cruisers, one of the younger deputies noticed something odd, a handprint on the rear window of Derek Palmer's patrol car. It was pressed in soot, black and perfect. Derek wiped it off before driving away, but later, when he parked under the lights of the station, he noticed the same print again, this time on the inside of the glass. To this day, drivers still report seeing flashing lights out there between Lubbock and Brownfield. A patrol car, old and dented, appearing from nowhere, tailing them for miles before vanishing in a cloud of dust. If they slow down enough, some claim they can still read the name on the side door, faint but visible beneath the layers of age and ash. Texas Highway Patrol, Unit 12. The end. The CB radio call. It happened in November of 2014, on a deserted stretch of Highway 349, south of Midland, Texas. The desert that time of year feels hollow, cold air sliding over dry earth, a silence so complete it rings in your ears. The sky was moonless that night, and the only light came from the dashboard of a Peterbilt 379 hauling empty freight north. The driver was James Jimmy Calhoun, a 42-year-old trucker who had been running that route for 15 years. He was used to the loneliness of West Texas nights, used to the way the dark sometimes played tricks on tired eyes. Around 1:37 a.m., he was 30 miles from the nearest gas station, humming to a country song on his CB radio when it suddenly crackled to life with a burst of static. Breaker 19, this is, the voice cut off, replaced by heavy breathing and faint interference. Jimmy frowned, turned the volume up. "You're breaking up there, buddy. Try again." A few seconds of silence, then, "This is, anyone out there? I need help. My rig's on fire. Mile marker 112, Highway 349. Please, God." Static swallowed the rest. Jimmy sat up straighter. There wasn't another rig scheduled along this route tonight. He picked up the mic. "Copy that, driver. Mile 112? You said your rig's on fire?" "Nothing. Just the faint hiss of the desert wind." He checked his odometer. He was near mile marker 103. 10 miles away. He hesitated for a moment, then flipped on his high beams and pressed harder on the gas. The night seemed to stretch endlessly, the road shimmering in the distance. At mile 111, he saw it, a faint orange glow flickering on the horizon. Smoke. He slowed as he approached. A large tractor-trailer sat jackknifed across the shoulder, the trailer blackened, the cabin crushed. Flames licked faintly at the wreckage, but it looked like it had been burning for hours. He grabbed his extinguisher and climbed down. "Hello," he shouted. The air smelled of oil and metal. "Anyone here?" No response. The fire was dying, the smoke curling lazily into the cold night air. He circled the truck and saw that the driver's door was open. The seat inside was empty, the windshield shattered outward. He leaned in, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the smoke. The CB radio inside the cab was still on, the mic hanging loose, speaker crackling faintly. He climbed in, holding his breath. The radio buzzed, and then a faint voice whispered through, "Help me." Jimmy froze. "Where are you?" "Behind you." He turned sharply, flashlight swinging across the desert. Nothing. Only sand and scattered debris. The radio crackled again. "You shouldn't have come." He stumbled out of the cab, heart pounding. The air had gone suddenly cold, his breath visible. He backed away from the wreck, watching as the dying flames flared briefly, lighting the truck's door. Painted on the side, barely visible through the soot, was the number 73. That was impossible. Truck 73 had belonged to his friend, Carl Bennett, who'd died in a wreck on this same highway 2 years earlier. Same mile marker. Same night of the month. Jimmy staggered backward, shaking his head. No. No, this isn't real. The radio in the wreck burst alive again, this time with clear sound. "Jimmy, you shouldn't have stopped." It was Carl's voice. He froze, staring at the truck. "Carl?" Static hissed, then the voice again, calm, almost resigned. "Get back in your rig, Jimmy. Don't look again." The hair rose on the back of his neck. "Carl, where are you?" Silence. Then faint laughter, distorted, echoing like it came from deep inside the radio itself. The headlights of the wreck flickered, once, twice, then shut off completely. The desert went dark. Jimmy ran back to his truck, slamming the door behind him. He turned the key. The engine coughed, then roared to life. His own CB came alive instantly with static and faint voices overlapping, all whispering the same thing: "Don't stop. Don't stop." He sped north, refusing to look in the mirrors. But after a few miles, his headlights caught movement on the shoulder, a figure standing beside the road. It was a man in a dark jacket, holding a CB mic in one hand. His face was pale, eyes wide. As Jimmy passed, the man mouthed something. "Behind you." Jimmy's hands shook as he drove. The radio flared again, louder now. "Breaker 19, this is Truck 73 calling anyone on the southbound. Engine's gone. Fuel's leaking. Please." He turned the radio off. The static continued anyway. When he reached the next rest stop, he pulled in and stumbled into the small diner that stayed open through the night. The waitress, an older woman with graying hair, looked up from her counter. "You okay, hon? You look like you saw a ghost." Jimmy nodded weakly. "You could say that. There's a wreck back at mile 112, truck's burned out." Her expression changed. "You sure about that?" "Yeah. Just saw it." She wiped her hands nervously. "That wreck's been there 20 years. No one's driven that road since." He blinked. "What do you mean?" "I just..." She shook her head. "Truck 73. Driver's name was Carl Bennett. Caught fire on a haul from San Antonio. Folks who stop there say his CB still calls for help sometimes." Jimmy felt the blood drain from his face. "That's not possible." The waitress sighed. "You're not the first one to come in here talking about hearing him. Most drivers learn to ignore it." He didn't sleep that night. By morning, he went back. He had to see it again. The sun had risen, the sky washed in pale orange. When he reached mile 112, there was no sign of any wreck. Just tire grooves half filled with sand. He parked, stepped out, and stood where the truck had been. Something metallic caught the sunlight in the dirt. He knelt, brushing sand away. A CB microphone, scorched and blackened, the cord burned through. He picked it up, and the speaker crackled softly. "Jimmy." He dropped it immediately. The sound continued even after it hit the ground, faint and distant, as if it were calling from miles away. He left it there and drove off without looking back. For weeks afterward, strange things happened in his cab. The CB would turn itself on at random hours, always to channel 19. Sometimes, in the dead of night, a voice would whisper his name, always followed by the same words: "Need help. Mile marker 112. He stopped answering. A month later, another driver named Tom Reeves reported hearing the same call. He went to investigate. The next morning, police found his rig abandoned 20 yards off the highway, engine running, door open. There were 2 sets of footprints in the sand, one leading from the truck, and another circling it, smaller, lighter, almost barefoot. Tom was never found. After that, the Texas Department of Transportation shut down that section of 349 at night for maintenance. Officially, it was to repair sinkholes caused by flash floods. But truckers knew better. They still hear the voice. Always the same transmission, same tone, same mile marker. Some say if you listen closely, you can hear a second voice in the background now, faint, overlapping with the first. It's calling someone else's name. And sometimes, when a driver passes mile 112 in the dark, their radio lights up on its own, the speaker crackling just long enough for one clear whisper. "Don't stop again." The end. The Lost Convoy. It happened in March of 2012, along the desolate desert road connecting Alpine and Van Horn, Texas, a 90-mile stretch of highway where cell service fades, and the stars feel close enough to touch. The terrain is rough and lonely, scattered with dry mesquite bushes and sand dunes that whisper when the wind blows. On that night, the military convoy had been driving for hours. 3 trucks, 2 Humvees, and a lead command vehicle, all part of a National Guard transport returning from a joint training exercise near El Paso. The mission was routine: equipment transfer, radio check-ins every 30 minutes, and arrival at Fort Stockton by dawn. Staff Sergeant William Bill Duran was in the second truck of the convoy, a weathered man of 48 who'd been in service half his life. His co-driver, Specialist Ryan Fields, was 22, fresh out of basic. Bill had promised to teach him the ways of Texas roads, the long hauls and the quiet dread of the desert at night. At 1:06 a.m., the radio hissed. "Convoy leader, this is Alpha 2. We're reading static on the long band. Can you confirm channel?" The lead vehicle responded, Captain Reyes' voice, calm and clipped. "Copy, Alpha 2. Channel confirmed. Stay close. We'll be reducing speed for terrain shift ahead." Bill nodded to Ryan. "Eyes up, rookie. These roads like to disappear on you." Ryan chuckled nervously. Disappearing roads. That's comforting. For the next 30 minutes, everything stayed normal. The line of trucks crawled along the highway under the watchful moon, each set of taillights a small red dot in the dark. The air inside the cab was dry and tense. Then, just past mile marker 74, the convoy leader's voice came over the radio again. "All units, we've got an unexpected detour ahead. GPS shows a bypass route to avoid erosion. Stay in formation." Bill frowned. Bypass route? This stretch hasn't changed in years. But the lead truck turned right onto a narrow dirt road cutting deep into the desert. One by one, the other vehicles followed. "Guess we're doing this," Ryan muttered. They followed for 5 minutes, headlights bouncing across uneven sand. The road narrowed further, tire ruts growing shallow. The radio crackled, then went dead. Bill tried the mic lead. "This is Alpha 2. You read?" Silence. Static. Then faintly, a distorted voice, Captain Reyes. "Stay close. Almost there." "Almost where?" Ryan whispered. The desert pressed in tighter, dunes rising on both sides. The air felt heavy, soundless. The truck's headlights reflected off nothing but dust. Then the lights ahead vanished. "Where'd they go?" Ryan asked, leaning forward. Bill slammed the brakes. "They must have crested the hill. Keep your eyes open." But when they reached the rise, there was nothing. The road ended abruptly, dropping into a dry basin littered with scattered rocks. No taillights, no tracks, no engines, just the wind. Bill grabbed the radio again. "Convoy leader, respond. Where the hell are you?" The mic hissed, then a faint reply, "We're right behind you." Bill froze. Slowly, he looked in the mirror. The road behind them was empty. Ryan's breathing quickened. "We should turn around, Sarge." "Yeah," Bill said, shifting into reverse. But as soon as he did, the headlights flickered, and the engine sputtered. The dashboard lights dimmed. A soft hum filled the air, not mechanical, but low and resonant, vibrating through the ground like a pulse. The wind stopped completely. "Something's wrong," Ryan said. The hum grew louder. The radio burst alive again, filled with overlapping voices, dozens of them, all whispering fragments of sentences. "Convoy down, engine lost, can't see them, follow the lights." Bill's voice trembled. "What lights?" As if in answer, a faint glow appeared in the distance, pale blue, moving slowly across the basin floor. It wasn't headlights. It flickered irregularly, almost like lanterns floating in fog. Ryan whispered, "That's not them." But Bill was already stepping out of the cab, drawn forward. The glow pulsed brighter, reflecting faintly off his face. "Stay here," he ordered. He took a few steps toward the edge of the basin. The hum deepened, vibrating in his chest. As he looked closer, he saw shapes moving within the light, outlines of trucks, Humvees, soldiers walking, their forms hazy, transparent, repeating the same slow motions like ghosts trapped in a loop. Bill stumbled backward. No. No, That's not real. Ryan climbed out after him. What do you see? Bill pointed. It's them. The convoy. Ryan squinted. I don't see anything. The hum spiked, a painful frequency that made their teeth ache. The ground beneath them seemed to shift slightly, as if something massive moved just beneath the sand. Then the radio screamed with static, followed by Captain Rhea's voice, clear, desperate, pull back. Don't follow the lights. Bill ran to the cab, slamming the door. We're leaving. He turned the key. The engine roared back to life. They sped up the incline, tires spitting dust. Behind them, the blue glow brightened, spreading across the basin like fire. When they reached the main highway again, everything went silent. No glow. No hum. Just desert. Bill pulled over, shaking. We need to report this. He grabbed the radio. Dispatch, this is Sergeant Duran. Convoy split at mile 74. We lost contact with the lead unit. Possible accident, requesting air recon. Static. Then, after a pause, a comm operator's voice, Sergeant Duran, negative on that convoy. Only one unit registered on that route tonight, yours. Ryan's eyes widened. No. That's wrong. There were 5 vehicles. Sir, the dispatcher said, the last recorded convoy on Highway 90 between Alpine and Van Horn was in 1989. They never made it to base. The line went dead. Bill stared at the mic, his knuckles white. When dawn broke, they retraced the path where the convoy had vanished. The dirt road was gone. Not covered, gone. The desert was smooth and unbroken. The only evidence they'd ever left the highway were their own tire tracks leading to nowhere. A week later, Bill filed a full report. The Army sent investigators, but no trace of the missing vehicles was found. The official explanation listed GPS malfunction and navigational error. But the story spread among other patrols. Drivers claimed they sometimes saw a line of faint headlights moving across the dunes late at night, vehicles traveling silently, too perfectly spaced, their outlines flickering like mirages. In 2016, a new National Guard unit passed through the same stretch. One of the drivers radioed in, "Convoy ahead, no transponders, looks military." Requesting identification. The radar operator at base checked his screen. There's nothing out there. The driver insisted, describing what he saw: old military trucks, gray paint faded, tail numbers barely visible. He even caught a call on an encrypted frequency: "This is Alpha 1, engine failure, requesting tow." They triangulated the signal. It came from an inactive channel decommissioned 30 years earlier, the same one used by Captain Rhea's unit. The next morning, when they searched the area, they found nothing except a half-buried convoy marker flag, the kind used during the 1989 transport. The metal was rusted, the fabric shredded by time. The last line of the flag's stencil was still legible: Operation Sandway, March 12, 1989. That date matched exactly the night Bill and Ryan had seen the Phantom convoy. Ryan left the Guard the following month. He moved east, refusing to speak about it. Bill stayed in contact for a while, but after a few years, his emails stopped. In 2021, a hiker discovered an old military dog tag near the basin west of mile 74. The name read, Reyes, M.C. The metal was clean, unweathered, as if it had been dropped there the night before. Since then, truckers crossing that desert stretch say that when the sky is cloudless and the wind dies, their radios fill with faint static. Sometimes, amid the noise, a single male voice breaks through. "Convoy in pursuit, maintain formation, almost there." Those who stop to listen swear they can see moving lights far off in the sand, glowing faint blue, perfectly spaced. And if they wait too long, their GPS resets to a new route, one that ends abruptly at an unmarked road leading nowhere. The end. Mile marker 313. It happened in October of 2019, along Highway 90 near Sanderson, Texas, a remote, dust-choked stretch of desert where the wind sounds like whispering voices and the horizon never seems to move closer. Locals called it the loneliest mile, a place people drove through fast, windows up, radios off. Truckers said there was something about the air there, too still, too heavy, like the desert was holding its breath. Deputy Sheriff Alan Brooks was on the night shift that week. He'd patrolled Terrell County for nearly 15 years, and Highway 90 was part of his routine, long hours of empty road, broken only by coyotes and the occasional stray tourist. It was a Friday, close to midnight, when dispatch called in a report. Multiple 911 calls from drivers near mile marker 313, the dispatcher said. Reports of a person standing by the road. Description varies, sometimes a man, sometimes a woman. Nobody stops. Alan sighed. Could be a drunk hitchhiker. Maybe, dispatch replied. But this is the third night in a row. He switched on his headlights to high beam and headed west. The desert was black and endless. The only sound came from the low hum of the engine and the faint crackle of the police radio. At 12:47 a.m., his dashboard clock flickered once. The temperature display dropped suddenly, from 68 to 42 degrees. He slowed, watching the markers on the side of the highway tick past. 309. 310. 311. When the reflective sign for 313 appeared in the headlights, he felt a strange weight in his chest. There was someone standing there. A figure, tall, thin, perfectly still beside the road. The white of their clothes glowed faintly under the headlights. Their face was turned away, looking toward the desert. Alan slowed to a crawl. "Evening," he called through the window. "You all right out here?" The figure didn't move. He parked on the shoulder, stepped out, and shined his flashlight. The beam caught the figure, a man, barefoot, wearing a torn white shirt and jeans. His skin looked gray, dry, like he'd been standing in the sun for days. "Sir?" Alan took a step closer. "Do you need medical assistance?" The man turned slowly. His eyes reflected the light, dull and empty, pupils milky white. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. Alan felt his throat tighten. "All right, sir, I'm going to call for help." Before he could finish, the man lifted one hand and pointed toward the desert. Then he vanished. No movement. No sound. Just gone. Alan stumbled back, his flashlight shaking. The desert wind had died completely. His breath fogged in the cold air. He turned in a slow circle. Nothing. No footprints, no sign of anyone. He got back in the cruiser and slammed the door. "Dispatch, this is Unit 5. I've got a 10 to 66 at mile 313. Possible hallucination, or..." The radio cut out with a loud burst of static. Then, faintly, a voice came through. "Don't stop." Alan froze. "Who is this?" Static again. Then silence. He restarted the engine and drove away fast, not looking in the mirrors. For several miles, everything was quiet. Then, just before he reached Sanderson, his rearview mirror caught something, movement behind him. Another pair of headlights. The vehicle followed at a distance, matching his speed exactly. He radioed dispatch again. "Got a tail, single vehicle, no plates visible." No response. He slowed, the car slowed. He accelerated, it accelerated. Then, as he crested a hill, the headlights behind him vanished completely. When he returned to the station at dawn, his shift partner, Deputy Keller, was already there, sipping burnt coffee. "You look like hell," Keller said. Alan recounted what happened. Keller frowned. "Mile 313? I've heard that one before." "You sure you didn't run into the ghost hitcher story the locals love?" "This wasn't a story," Alan said flatly. "He was there." Keller sighed. "Let me show you something." He opened a file drawer and pulled out a folder labeled mile marker 313, unexplained. Inside were reports dating back to 1998, all from officers or travelers describing the same thing, a figure by the road, always at 3:13 a.m., always silent. The last report before Allen's was from 2013. The deputy who filed it, Robert Keene, had disappeared 2 days later. His cruiser was found idling near mile 313, doors open, radio still on. Allen read the report twice. The description of the figure was identical: gray skin, white clothes, silent. 2 nights later, he went back. He didn't tell dispatch. Didn't tell Keller. He just drove alone, headlights off until he neared the marker. The desert was so quiet he could hear his own heartbeat. When the green sign appeared ahead, he slowed to a stop. The digital clock on the dashboard glowed 3:12 a.m. He waited. 1 minute later, the radio crackled. "Unit 5, do you copy?" It wasn't dispatch. It was his own voice, faint, distorted. He gripped the mic. "Who is this?" The reply came, calm and hollow. "You shouldn't have come back." He dropped the mic outside. The air shimmered, heat waves in the cold night. A faint light flickered near the mile marker, like the reflection of headlights in fog. Then he saw the figure again. This time closer. The man in white stood by the passenger side door, his face expressionless. His eyes were darker now, empty pits that seemed to absorb light. Allen reached for his weapon, but the holster was empty. He looked down, his belt was bare. When he looked up again, the man was gone. The radio burst alive with a sound like wind, only it wasn't wind. It was whispering. Dozens of voices, layered together, all saying the same thing: "Stay with us." The cruiser engine died. The lights flickered. The air grew freezing cold. Allen grabbed his flashlight and opened the door. The desert around him was glowing faintly, a pale bluish haze spreading across the sand. Within it, he could see movement, figures, half visible, walking slowly in a circle around the mile marker. Their shapes flickered in and out, as if shifting between worlds. Allen stumbled backward, tripping over the curb of the asphalt. One of the figures broke from the circle and moved toward him, fast. Its face became clear under the light, and his stomach turned. It was Deputy Robert Keene. His skin was pale, eyes black and empty, uniform torn and burned. His voice was dry and cracking when he spoke. "Tell them not to stop," Allen shouted, backing toward the car. "Robert, what happened to you?" The figure tilted its head. "It's still here." Then everything went black. When Allen woke, the sun was rising. He was in the driver's seat, the engine idling, radio silent. His watch read 6:07 a.m. He checked his body, uninjured. His uniform was covered in dust. He stepped out. The road was empty. The desert silent. Only one thing was different: the mile marker sign. The number 313 was gone, melted smooth as if the metal had been heated to liquid. When he returned to the station, Keller was waiting outside, pale-faced. "You were gone all night," Keller said. "We sent units looking. You vanished off the GPS near 313. Your dashcam stopped at 313 exactly." Allen reviewed the footage himself later that day. It showed him pulling up to the mile marker. The headlights cut across the road, empty desert stretching on both sides. Then, in the reflection of the rear window, a shape appeared, someone standing directly behind the cruiser. The timestamp blinked 3 hours and 13 minutes. The image froze. The screen went black. Allen reviewed the footage himself later that day. It showed him pulling up to the mile marker. The headlights cut across the road, empty desert stretching on both sides. Then, in the reflection of the rear window, a shape appeared, someone standing directly behind the cruiser. The timestamp blinked 3 hours and 13 minutes. The image froze. The screen went black. Allen filed a report, but the sheriff told him to mark it as equipment failure. The story never made it into the official records. 3 weeks later, another driver reported the same figure. A trucker headed east claimed he saw a man standing by the mile marker at 3:13 a.m., motionless, staring at him as he passed. The next morning, highway crews found the driver's rig parked a mile ahead, doors open, engine running, no driver. Alan quit the department soon after. He moved to San Angelo, far from the desert. But sometimes, just before dawn, his phone alarm glitches and rings at exactly 3:13 a.m. When he looks at the screen, it shows an unknown number calling, 313, and when he answers, there's only static. If he listens long enough, beneath the static, a voice always whispers the same words. Don't stop. The end.